Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio World. It's me, Tony B. Day 4 of Earth Observed More Than a Day. If you've been listening this morning, you just heard an amazing presentation from the American Lung Association. And right now we have Winds of Change, local ecocultural systems, barriers, and access. And I am just going to go ahead and turn this over right now to the presenter, Kim Kamara, Executive Director of Winds of Change.
Greetings, everyone. We welcome you to step into our words today with two elders that we have in the house. And that is John Halliday, who is sitting to my right, and soon to join Jeffrey Thomas. Both are enrolled Muckleshoot. John Yakima, Muckleshoot Duwamish, and Warm Springs. Jeff is Muckleshoot Elder and Warm Springs also. So they will be bringing their teachings, being the first peoples of the lands we are standing on right at this moment and throughout Seattle. The villages of Chief Cheshiahud and others that are now in the areas of what's Lake Washington, Ravenna Creek, Thornton Creek, Lickteed Springs up north, Lake Washington, Sammamish, and the region here. So we are honored to be blessed with their presence and what they are bringing. So I will now hand it over to John Halliday. Thank you.
Hello, I'm John Halliday. My Indian name is Aukali, and I am an enrolled Muckleshoot tribal member. But ancestrally, the Muckleshoot are Duwamish and Upper Puyallup people. And the Muckleshoot people moved to the reservation called Muckleshoot after the Puget Sound Indian Wars in 1855 and 1856. So a lot of people don't recognize that Muckleshoot people are Duwamish simply because they have a different name now. But that's only because the government moved us to a reservation called Muckleshoot, and the people living there took on that name. But ancestrally, we're Duwamish people and Upper Puyallup people. So because we abided by the Treaty of Point Elliott and the Treaty of Medicine Creek, we are in fact the political successors to the ancestral Duwamish rights and are able to hunt and fish and gather in the Duwamish ancestral territories. And that has been upheld in the court by the Bolt case and by many other court rulings that the Muckleshoot people are the rightful legal inheritors to the ancestral Duwamish rights here in King County. And so, you know, we're here today, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen our commercials on TV where we're making sure that people understand the history and our rights, and that no one can come and say that you don't have a right to those rights because we abided by the treaty. We moved to the reservation, which was an absolutely horrific experience. You know, you had back then in the 1850s, you had a choice. You could assimilate into the non-Indian culture and stay in the city. People who married white settlers were allowed to stay, or people who were half-breeds, but the full-bloods had to move to the reservation. And so they literally were uprooted from their waterfront homes and moved to the reservation. But the trade-off was they got to keep their ancestral tribal rights. And it was a way of resisting being assimilated into white society and white culture by sticking together as a people. So today, that has been preserved into present day. And the Muckleshoot people are the rightful, legal, political successors to the ancestral Duwamish rights and are legally the ancestral Duwamish people of King County. I want to tell you a little bit about my family and first, make a comment on the overall society as we have it today. And you have to think about, what do we value as people? What are our values and how do we approach things from a management perspective based on those values? And where have we come from and where are we going to in the future? So to give you perspective, you may get one perspective while you're in school or growing up or from the history books or from television and movies. And you may get perspective there, but I'm going to give you a perspective from the natives who are from this area. My ancestor was Cheshiyahud, the chief of the Lake Union bands of the Duwamish. And my great-great-grandmother was his sister. And so my family comes from right there in the heart of Seattle, before it ever was a city, before any of those people, the non-natives came, before the British came. My family has lived there. And then my other family was Chief Quilton, who was the leader from upriver up on the Seuss Creek or Boise Creek area in Enumclaw. And he led the warriors with Leshai that surrounded the city of Seattle. And we were at war with the United States because Chief Seattle had signed the Treaty of Point Elliott with no reservation for the Duwamish people in all of King County. And so there was Suquamish, Tulalip, Puyallup, Squaxin Island, and Nisqually, but there was no land for the Duwamish people in the Green and White Rivers, the Lake Washington, Lake Sammamish, and right there at Elliott Bay. So we were left with what we thought was no choice but to go to war. So we went to war with Isaac Stevens, the territorial governor. Leshai went to war too, because what they were offering in those treaties was a death sentence. The lands that they picked out for us was not enough to sustain the people, and the chiefs could do the math. They knew that the land was not going to sustain the people, and so we went to war. The treaties themselves were like a declaration of war. Uproot yourself from your home, where you're living, and squish onto this concentration camp and survive. So basically, it was a plan to exterminate us. And so we had to fight. And we fought. And we surrounded the city of Seattle. We had skirmishes. We fought. And eventually, we got the governor to renegotiate the treaty at the Treaty of Fox Island in August of 1856. And so he expanded the lands at Squaxin Island. He expanded the lands at Nisqually and Puyallup and created the Muckleshoot Indian Reservation. So the Muckleshoot people owe a great deal of debt to those warriors who died and gave their lives to create the lands that have sustained us through today. And a lot of people don't know that history. They don't know that Chief Seattle negotiated the peace. And that's one of the reasons why the citizens named the city after him and built this big headstone for him over at Suquamish. So perspective is really important in understanding where we were and where we are today and how we got to where we are. And you have to remember also in the 1850s that slavery was still legal. The Civil War wouldn't happen for more than a decade after the treaty was signed. And you have to also think what was happening to the Indians at the time. Now, imagine if right now the United States government said, we have made claim to these lands and it's pristine, untouched wilderness with old growth timber, and the rivers are teeming with fish and wildlife everywhere as far as you can see, just a paradise. And we're going to give you 320 acres for free. Imagine if that happened today. People would, immigrants came from Norway, immigrants came from Sweden, immigrants came from Italy. People came from all over to homestead and to get these free lands. But the problem is that there were Indians there, and so they had to go and push them off the land. They had to go by force with soldiers, push the Indians off the land. And so Muckleshoot people fought and then were able to retain a homeland, fighting against the United States military and win a concession. And it's not often that you can point to in history where the Indians fought back and actually got them to do a concession, and they created a reservation. Also, you have to say that, it was true that some of the white citizens didn't like what Isaac Stevens was doing, that he had lived in peace with, the people had lived in peace with the Indians for 8 years, 10 years. I mean, the territory was created in 1848, and then in 1855, they were doing the treaties. So these citizens had lived in peace for 7 years, 8 years with the Indians, and now a war breaks out. What's going on? So they actually wrote to people from the State Department and said they didn't like how things were going. Citizens refused to serve in the militia, and they were jailed by the governor. And then a judge ruled that the governor should release the citizens, and then the governor jailed the judge. So then the judge found the governor in contempt of court, and the governor pardoned himself. So the citizens wrote to the State Department, and the governor actually got a letter that his conduct was not in good standing and proper, representing the president of the United States, and he renegotiated. So, a lot of people don't know that history and that perspective, but I bring it to you today because I believe that through having different perspectives and understanding is how we truly grow. If you look at the word university means a place where all the perspectives are. And if you know the difference between a university and a college, a university is supposed to be a place where knowledge grows, that the professors spend 25% of their time in research and development, and also their model is not incestuous. The professors at a university are all professors who come from other places because they don't want to have an incestuous learning model where professors both learn and teach at the same school. So they deliberately bring perspectives from other schools so that they can collaborate, and the growth of our knowledge continues to grow, and we can be on the cutting edge. It's through having other perspectives that we are on the cutting edge of development as mankind. So it's very important that all of us know the different perspectives and understand them, and they are present, so we know where we are and we can plan for the future. So in using that model, I bring you this knowledge today that Indians existed here, and that we had a different life philosophy. They considered us foreigners. We were not citizens until 1824, but they considered us foreigners. And our worldview was that all life has value, and that our belief system was that all life is our relative. And the people came in, took the land, put us on the reservations, and said, "You're ignorant. You need to go to the boarding school." And we said, "The earth is alive." And they said, "You're too stupid. And you need to become Christian people. You need to learn English and forget your language, forget your religion." But I want to point out that all this time later, looking back on it, who was truly right? We believed that everything was alive. And now, through science, and you look at things microscopically, you find that that's the truth. Everything is alive. What we were saying was true. Our understanding of existence was true. And that's just to show you or expand to you a perspective of how far we've come as a society from that time to now, and where are we going to go? And so by looking at perspective historically, we can change our management systems, how we manage our environment. How are we going to live with other life? And in our worldview, it's how do we live with the other than human persons? That other life is actually has a soul, has a spirit, has villages, has marriages of their own, has their own language with each other, that all life has its own world of how it survives, and that our very survival depends on them giving themselves to us. That if we don't respect them as a being who has a life, has a soul, and then we take that life and we don't understand that if we disrespect them and don't allow for them to regenerate, to have their own marriages, to have their own ceremonies, if we wipe them out and we don't respect them, that they're not wiped out, but they just choose not to come again and provide sustenance to us. That they go somewhere else. That by us respecting other than human life, they choose to give themselves to us, and through that, we will sustain ourselves. But I think that it's important to understand from the old perspectives to today, how are we going to incorporate that into our management systems of today. So let me give you an example of where we have law, but it doesn't always work. It doesn't work. We have a law that there's a setback to streams of 100 feet. I had a stream in my backyard of my house, and that they wanted to build a house next door to mine and on a small lot. So it wasn't by regulation allowable, but they wanted to waive the regulations and build a tiny house on this small lot. And this small lot had this stream running underground, and also the land that I was living on was a Superfund site. So there was this Asarco plant in Tacoma that had put all this arsenic into the air for years and years, and the soil around my house was full of arsenic. So they were going to disturb the soil that had been undisturbed, dump the soil into the stream, which is going to go right across the street to the pond at Titlow Park, which is they're supposed to be trying to restore to be salmon-bearing habitat. So here this stream is an upland of a salmon habitat-bearing area that they're trying to restore, and they're going to dump arsenic directly into the stream that's going to go into a stormwater drain and then directly into the pond. So I think logically that if I report this, that's it. They're not going to let them build. So I report it to the city of Tacoma. They ignore me. So I report it to EPA, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, State Fish and Wildlife, State Department of Natural Resources, Tacoma Parks, Tacoma, my legislator from Tacoma, the mayor's office. I went to everyone saying there's a stream in here. And the planning department for Tacoma said, no, this is a stormwater system. And I said, but it has flow 365 days a year. It's a spring. There's flow. This is not a stormwater system. Nope, it's a stormwater system. So I got a representative from the State Department of Natural Resources to come to my house and to look at it. And he said, yep, that's a stream. And so he actually added it to the state's hydrological map. And I got that hydrological map and I was so happy. I thought, okay, I'm going to save this stream. I'm going to save the pond across the street. And I sent it to the city of Tacoma and said, now you have to recognize that this is a stream and there's a 100-foot setback from streams. They said, no, we don't have to follow that. We get to make our own determination, and we're calling it a stormwater system. And that's when I realized that I was not dealing with people that were planning on following the rules. I was dealing with people that systematically were breaking the rules in order to allow development. That how many springs and streams are out there that the city planning departments are calling stormwater systems that are actually streams that they're destroying. And no one will do anything about it because they said the city has the right to make its own determination. And so what do if a arm of the government is planning and systematically, blatantly breaking the rules and no one will listen? This is the death of 1,000 cuts. This is, I'll bet you, this is the workaround that's talked about in planning department meetings. Oh, you got these little springs stopping your development? This is what you do. You make sure that you have jurisdiction over environmental assessments and that you can call them whatever you want to. And once you do that, no one cares. EPA doesn't care. US Fish and Wildlife doesn't care. Nobody cares. And so that's where we are today. That's what's happening. So with that, I will turn it over to my brother, Jeff.
And before we do that, is this a good time, John and Jeff, to do a song as we would have started the program?
Sure.
And then Jeff, you introduce yourself after that and then bring us your beautiful words and teachings.
So I will do a short song, and this is just in honor of all that other than human life that's always around us. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'd also like to just mention that John assisted designing the troll that's out at Lincoln Park in West Seattle. And the troll is, his part was the flute that she plays to the orchids.
That's right.
So, hands up to John.
Thank you. OCM.
Okay. So, we'll now proceed with Jeffrey Thomas.
Well, am I on?
Got to flip it on.
Hello. Are we on? Okay. High school brother. That was incredibly beautiful. In fact, I wonder if the rest of us, the rest of you all, you heard the birds flying. You heard the fish swimming. You heard the waves crashing. You heard the deer browsing in the old growth forest. Hope you heard the Indian people of past, present, future singing, praying, dancing, celebrating life. And so with that, I want to thank Kim Kamara of the Winds of Change Alliance for arranging for us to be here to share our ideas, and I look for friendship with you all today and beyond. And so with that, my name is Jeffrey Thomas. I'm the director of the Puyallup Tribe's Timber Fish and Wildlife Program. That's my 9 to 5. But really, I think it's my 24/7, 365, which is okay. That gives me a chance to work with wonderful people like Kim. Even my friend Vera, who we have out here that's joined us today. She's a very talented educator. But of course, my brother, it's great to work with him. It's great for us both to honor our mother and the work that she always did here in the Seattle area. And it really is representative of our entire family at all here in along the Duwamish Lakes area and throughout Muckleshoot country, down into Oregon, the Northwest, and really the nation and international community overall. I hope that you saw in my biography that I've been a cross-cultural ambassador that began my work as a Seattle All-American Indian dancer back when I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
And so with that, today we'd like to offer a land acknowledgement that comes from our family. And so I'll just go ahead and share that with you now. You can consider this to be the Cheshiahut family, original people's land acknowledgement. It's coming from me, a Muckleshoot tribal elder, here on April 25th, 2024. Would you like to hold this for me, brother?
Sure.
It's got a, okay. This comes from my heart. I did compose it, but it's not yet ready for memorization yet. Oh, beloved Creator, please be with us as we acknowledge the land, air, waters, and native peoples of our area. Please recognize my family as being the 7th generation descendants of Julia John Siddle, the 70-year-old Muckleshoot elder who helped Seattle host the International Potlatch Festival of 1935. I come to you today as a Skatulapsh, one of the lake people, Patquapsh, whose people included the Shluit, whom were the people of the Ravenna Creek marshes, and whose name actually translates into the canoe perforation people. I pray to you today, grandfather, as an elder of the Lake John Cheshiahut family, the family of the Duwamish Lakes district chief who was born at Pasquequo, Skate Point, upon southern Union Bay during 1820. Please let me honor the local groups at the northern end of the huge lake we are from, known as Hotco, which are the Tuabadash, the people of the Thornton and the Mackler Creek villages. While yet further east, we have the Sababapsh, the Sammamish, and their easterly neighbors, the Sadok Albert, the fearsome people. The other main tribes who neighbor Muckleshoot ancestral lands today are known as the Yakima, the Puyallup, the Suquamish, and the Tulalip tribes. Continuing around the Big Lake, the east side group is the Tubbu. Well, south of them are the people at the head of the slough, the Satsakopsh, followed by the Drying House people, the Swasbalter, which leads into the south end of Lake Washington, which is the lands of the Black River supernatural being people, the Scutchlups. The west side of the lake belonged to the Sluish, the Union Bay people, which my Cheshiahut family descends from, and is where our ancestral special places are, such as the Mont Lake Portage, Schwass Achwish, the Ravenna Creek Marsh, Sluish, Green Lake, Dutplatch, Sandpoint, Squisub, Thornton Creek, Tehupeed, and the Thornton Creek Cranberry Marsh, Bluequats. They all still continue to be cherished by our families today. Moving west from there towards Lake Union and the Ship Canal to the Shilshole Bay estuary is where you find the Shilshalupsh. While south of there is the village sites of West Point, Pagadzaltsuk, Smith Cove, Tuckup, Belltown Prairie, Baba Cub, Zizalalich, the crossing over place, which is where the King Street Station is today, and our Alki Point, Sabakwapsh, as well. Heading up the Duwamish River, we need to honor the Tudawapsh, the people of the Duwamish and the Cedar and the Black Rivers, including their villages known as Hahapush at the mouth of the Duwamish, Herring's House, Tualtu, and the lower Duwamish River village named Totolkus. During treaty times, the Black River drained Lake Washington as well as the Cedar River into the Duwamish River, which was retitled as being the White River above that point. And so for the Cedar River, we must honor the Kachalupsh and their village, Dahuapko, at the Cedar River, Black River confluence. And then the Black River Supernatural Beings Village, which was called Scutchalubs, which was already mentioned, besides which we have the central Black River Village that's known as Dahuapko. Please let me honor the people of the Lower White River now, grandfather, the Stuckabish, and their village at Stuck, and their other village, Tatalpa. And we must be sure to honor the Green River people here too, grandfather, the Skopabsh. This includes the central village known as Ilalku, the village of the striped water, at the historical forks of the Green and White River, which have drastically changed since 1906, and whose people are the Sialkoabsh. The people further up the Green River are the Sususi Creek people, the Susupsh, and the Burns Creek people, including the village where Leshai held out against the military forces during the Indian War, the Subshalupsh. And now we'll honor the Smolkomish, the Smolkopsh, who are the people of the Upper White River, often referred to as the Sabalkwapsh, which names refer to the Upper White River crossing itself, known as Smolko, and they were named after it. The people of the Upper White River, Boise Creek Village near Enumclaw, are known as the Quilitsupsh at the village site of Squillets. Finally, we can honor the Upper Puyallups as being part of the ancestral lands of our South King County watersheds, where they are known as the Tuak, or Tequaquapsh, the people of the Carbon River area. And these include the various vast points of that region, such as Lake Tap, Stucks, the Stuck River Village, Stuck, the Hylabush Creek Village, and or the Upper Wapto Creek people, the Skowadupsh, and their villages too. And so with that, grandfather, we are proud to honor the original people of these lands. I am proud to be from them, I want to thank them for who I am and for my chance to be with all of you here today. I ask that you bless their families, their stewardship goals, and the loving care which they have always given to their lands and their waters and their air. These original people of these lands will always be the true people of Puget Sound. They will always be the people of the soil, the forests, the air, the mountains, the streams, the beaches, and the saltwater areas. They will always be here. I close today, Grandfather, by asking that you bless all of us right here, right now, to commemorate our local ancestral lands and air and waters, and our mutual hopes that they will always symbolize equal cultural diversity and love. These are the places where there must have been old growth forests during past times, and for which we still must have old forests today. And so, to all, let's keep cherishing the connections to the land, our connections to the land, and maintaining the cherished values we have to have for the land and waters and air's natural conditions. Do not forget our plant and animal relatives of the land, sea and air, and first and foremost, let's get Indians back into the forest now. And so with that, thank you.
Thank you. So at this point, are we going to keep going or open it up for questions? Another song?
Let's do, if you are able to do another song, and then we'll be taking a break shortly.
Okay.
So then after that, we'll continue with Jeffrey Thomas's presentation and words of very, very, how do I say, very, very deep knowledge and experience that he himself has walked as a Muckleshoot elder, as a Puyallup Tribe Timber Fish and Wildlife Director, as a community ecocultural systems, more than an advocate. Jeff's life runs deep in these connections, and deep with many woven, as the cedar hat I have on, woven relationships with the everything connected to our environment, as well as all of the peoples who are the two-leggeds. So we give honor. So thank you.
So right now I'm going to sing a song, and this is the Women's Honor Song, which was given to the Muckleshoot Canoe family by Chief Frank Nelson from Canada. And I'm singing it to honor our Mother Earth, but also to honor all of the women and female energy on the planet, which seems to keep us men walking in a good way. You know, we lose our way sometimes, and we need our wives and daughters and moms to pull us aside and say, hey, you know, why don't we try and walk in a good way? And so this is to honor our Mother Earth and all of the women. Wait, I gotta remember it now.
Oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, oh, hey, oh, oh, hey, oh, Hey, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, oh, hey, oh, oh, hey,
Thank you. Many blessings, much honoring just to continue that for our women and for everyone in our families as we walk in good ways with acknowledging that. And again, we'll just say our earth, our waters, our winged ones, our finned ones, even the creepy crawlies are all part of all of that. And we definitely give full acknowledgement to each and every one of you who walk in these ways to continue in doing this ecocultural systems stewardship and advocacy work. It's what we're here for. It's what we're being strongly called for. So we acknowledge each and every one of you. Thank you. Everyone here present, everyone that will be watching this and is watching this, we extend out our thoughts, our acknowledgement, our thanks, our respect, and our honoring. Thank you.
You're listening to
Osieb.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio World. This is Earth Deserves More Than a Day. We are going to return to this riveting presentation brought to us by Winds of Change. We're going to take a short break right now, and we're going to start that off with a message from our sponsor, King County Parks.
And I'm the director of King County Parks and Recreation. And we are partnering with Rainier Avenue Radio on their Earth Deserves More Than a Day programming. And we want to hear from you about our next Parks Levy. King County Parks will be at Columbia Cedar Theater over the next week. Tune in and drop by and tell us what you think about what's most important to you in terms of outdoor recreation and access. And take the survey, which ends by April 29th. We look forward to hearing your thoughts about what's most important to you. Let's all come together and make every day Earth Day.
I'm Paul Pearson, host of Star Time, and this is my real voice. Honest, you're hearing it on Rainier Avenue Radio .world.
Should have told her you were sorry.
Welcome to the coronavirus pandemic. I'll take coronavirus for 100. Fever, chills, shortness of breath, loss of taste or smell. What is stay at home and isolate? Correct. Coronavirus for 200. Inability to stay awake, persistent pain or pressure in chest, double breathing. What is seek immediate help?
Coronavirus for 500.
Crippling and potentially dead infectious disease eliminated the United States with vaccination.
What is the polio vaccine?
Correct.
I'll take coronavirus for 700.
The Daily Double. Should I take the coronavirus vaccine?
Wait. Hold up. This is not a game. It's time for serious discussions. We have coronavirus vaccines, but not everyone is comfortable taking them. Here's the facts. Based on what has been proven about vaccines for other diseases, COVID-19 vaccine may help keep you from getting seriously ill, even if you do get the virus. Getting vaccinated also may protect people around, particularly those at greater risk for severe illness from COVID-19. We don't yet have all of the answers. Get informed, talk to your healthcare physician, and make the right decision for you. This is a message supported by the Washington State Department of Health.
Hello, I'm Tony Young, and every week I will be your guide to the music of the Fab Four with my show With the Beatles. John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr, those four lads from Liverpool. First airings are Tuesday night from 7 to 9 p.m. with repeats on Thursdays and Saturdays from 8 to 10 a.m. right here on Rainier Avenue Radio. Tune in to catch Beatlemania.
Generational wealth. Generational wealth. Generational wealth. What is generational wealth? We asked our communities, and this is what they had to say.
Generational wealth is incredibly difficult to accrue. My mom likes to joke that we come from a long line of people who are bad at money. She always talks about wanting to buy a house so that she has something to leave her kids. I got really sick when I was a kid, and all our money went towards that. I had to leave college because I couldn't afford my next year's tuition, medical bills, and life. It's all so difficult. And then you think about wanting to leave something behind for your kids. Well, how can you leave something behind for your kids when every day you're trying to make sure that your kids have joy and happiness and health and fulfillment today? Every day I'm really concerned about if I'll be able to keep living and making art in this city for myself.
This campaign to create awareness to generational wealth is brought to you by the Department of Neighborhood's Generational Wealth Initiative, the Washington Housing Finance Commission, and Rainier Avenue Radio .world.
Rainier Avenue Radio, your community radio station will provide you with more information. Rainier Avenue Radio.
Rainier Avenue Radio and Earth deserves more than a day. It's me, Tony B. This is day 4 of our summit, where we are presenting panel discussions, lectures. We've got film, interviews in support of Earth Day. Like we say, Earth deserves more than a day. So this is going on all week long. And in particular for this presentation that we have right now, I'd like to thank Humanities Washington. We appreciate your efforts in making this happen and come to fruition. I'm going to turn this back over now to Kim Kamara of Windz of Change, Executive Director. And we're going to continue again with this panel and this discussion and this amazing piece that's taking place right here. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. Greetings again, everybody. And while we are going to proceed next with Jeffrey Thomas, I just want to take this time to let you know we're doing another program over in Camp Long, West Seattle. One of the only City of Seattle Parks and Recreation Parks that has old growth forest trees. This will be a day-long, active, interactive program being led by our Coastal Coast Salish peoples in connecting you with indigenous trees and everything in relationship to that. So we highly encourage you. Flyers are here physically, and we will be posting shortly. June 30th, Sunday, June 30th, 10 to 4 p.m. Come join us. Registration required. Space is limited there. So thank you very much. Okay, now we will proceed with Jeffrey Thomas.
Well, lucky me. And I mean that sincerely. In many ways, this particular presentation may have been many years, if not decades, coming. I'm always trying to revamp my work and make it more meaningful to others in the hopes that they'll find it useful. And of course, it's that change that we're all looking for that is really the ultimate target. So I'm not quite sure how to get my PowerPoint up on the screen, but if we can get that going, then I did have a first slide that was like an introductory slide, but that looks like slide number 2. So I don't know what's best to be seen on the screen. I'm okay with it just being full screen while I do a narrative, because I'm not going to be doing anything else that exciting. So is that good enough for you guys? I mean, it's not going to be full screen? Okay, well, if that's the case then, and again, there's a lot of detail on the slides, and so I hate to for you all not to be able to see what it is I'm talking about. And so on my opening slide, which I didn't see, there was a picture of Lake John Cheshiahood. So is that, are we not able to go back to the opening slide? There he is. Okay. And, you know, I wanted to make sure that he got his proper recognition here, given that he's really a major inspiration for today's discussion, let alone the changes that we're going to be talking about. So thank you for bringing up the opening title, because it is Local Ecocultural Resources, Acceptable Access and Barriers. And so today we're going to talk about ecocultural resources, especially locally, and things like access to them or barriers thereof. So I do want to thank you for everybody for inviting us to be here today to talk about this very important subject. And as you see, you have Lake John Cheshiahood, the man himself, right there on the right-hand side. The woman to his left is his second wife, Madeline. She then was buried as well as he was up in North Seattle in a fairly illustrious location. But Lake John Cheshiahood in his early years then was switching over. Again, okay, that's great. And so Lake John Cheshiahood in his early years, as I mentioned, was born in 1820. And so in the 1850s, when the Denny's arrived, he was already in his adult years. And he was also chief of the Duwamish Lakes. And so that was especially important to the Denny's. And eventually, David Denny did claim land along Lake Union, which is next there to Union Bay, which is where the villages of Lake John Cheshiahood were located. But this is what he looked like himself. And then the people that are going to be in the next picture will be his descendants. And so let's go ahead and go to that next one. Lake John Cheshiahood was especially renowned as being a canoe carver. And so there's that. That's pretty distinctive about him. Not to mention, as I say, he was chief of the Duwamish Lakes, which means the entire Lake Washington area. And that is still a 20-mile lake today with lots of different streams and inlets draining into it, and a lot of fish and animal and plant resources associated with that entire system for sure. So I just put this other picture up because I just wanted to underscore that, yes, I have been a cross-cultural ambassador since a very early age. That's a picture of me at 10 years old. It's posted by the Museum of History and Industry. That's me appearing at the Museum of History and Industry in 1968 at something that they called Christmas Around the World. So there I am in my regalia. That's the kind of things that we did with Mom as a part of the Seattle All-American Indian Dancers. On to the right, then you'd see me 20 years later, along with what is a 7th-generation picture. And so we talk about Julia John Siddle. Well, that's a picture of her there in 1935. I mentioned that as well. And so that is her with her daughter, Laura, my great-grandmother, sitting in front of a teepee along with all of their personal basketry that there is on exhibit there as they're a part of the Indian village of the International Potlatch Festival of 1935. Just above them would be my grandmother, and then beside her is my mother, me, my son, and my grandson, my oldest grandson, Teal. There's what that really wonderful outfit of my mother's looked like there as an inset, and it is the outfit that I did wear during my entire career as a Seattle All-American Indian dancer. Let's go next one. Right here, I just wanted to maybe underscore what I had been talking about when I was doing the land acknowledgement, which is that there are these many traditional places and the different original groups that were associated with them that really make up the cultural landscape of the Muckleshoot people, past, present, and future. And so I thought I'd give you this representation of the upper part of the watershed. I mentioned that it was known as the White River above the Black River, Duwamish River confluence. And this is an example of what you would find in the upper watershed. I mentioned this village named Ilalco at the confluence of the Green and the White Rivers. There was historically, they did come together, but things did happen after 1906, as I'd mentioned, which is some real drastic changes to the White River flow. But as it is, that location of their historical Ilalco village is not just shown there, but also the flow of the Green River, which we refer to as being the scope, or the people of the Green Rivers being the scope hobs, as well as the Small River, which is also described there as being the Small River. And so that's, again, the homelands of the upper White River Indians, known as the Smokomish. And you still also have on there what is the persisting flow of the White River, which means it only goes south now, not without that northern branch to the Green, but that's also known as the Stuck. And so that's the part that people recognize as being the White River today as it flows out of Game Farm Park on its way down towards Sumner. But that's just the historical landscape. There's lots of historical tribal names there, references to the landmarks that were important to them, and just things like that. So that's what a historical map starts to look like when it's created. Let's go ahead and move on. It's called the Indian Names Map from T.T. Waterman. Let's go to the next slide. So here, that's a representation of the Ship Canal Waterway going all the way from Union Bay on Lake Washington westerly until it reaches the Puget Sound and is known as Shoal Bay. I mentioned that also in my comments, that these were places that were especially important to our family, the Sluisabsh of the Union Bay. And I mentioned Sand Point, a little bit to the right of that point, some further up the lake, like on Thornton Creek and McAleer Creek. I also mentioned Green Lake, and you see that here in this 1909 representation of this part of Seattle. You can see that development is really starting to ramp up in this portion of Seattle, north of Lake Union and what became the future Ship Canal pathway. As it is right now, in this picture, in between Union Bay and Lake Union, it does say Alaska Yukon Pacific Exposition, which means that this was done in 1909, and showing you the location of what was then the university campus that was less than 20 years old. I mentioned Green Lake, most notably in this particular picture, is that you would see that if you take away all of the road systems, that there still is a historical stream connecting Green Lake down into Union Bay. In fact, that was a fish-bearing stream, and so the salmon that would go up that stream, Ravenna Creek, would then get all the way to Green Lake, and so that was a fish-bearing stream, water body historically as well. So that's just what the historical, give you a sense of what had happened by 1909, which is the time at which Lake John Cheshiahu did decide to relocate to where his daughter was at over on the Suquamish Reservation. It's some 35, almost 45 years since City of Seattle had officially outlawed the presence of Native people within the city boundaries. And so you can imagine that Lake John Cheshiahu, being from Union Bay and Lake Union as he was, being the headman of the entire Lake Washington area, that he was sad to see the changes that had taken place upon his own lands during his lifetime, for sure. So let's go to the next one. That's a picture of Big Tree Park, otherwise known as Ravenna Park. I just mentioned it as being the outlet of the fish-bearing stream that drained from Green Lake. So they're at Ravenna Park, Big Tree Park, as they were calling it back in the time of the 1909 exposition. In fact, to the right, it says that it gives you directions on how to get there from the exposition, because again, it's still just around the corner from the University of Washington campus of today. And so it shows the huge trees that were there. And in fact, it says some of the totem poles and big trees at Ravenna Park on the postcard to the right. So it was definitely known to have that, which means that it was characteristic of the lands that were taken over by the University of Washington. And here, the next picture will show you what I mean. So let's go ahead and move on. Well, it's not the next one, it's after this, but again, just to give you a sense of scale. So you can see an individual standing there on the railroad car with his arm extended, and it's not even reaching the top of the stump. That's or the tree, portion of the tree that's they're loaded up on the car. Same thing, like just you see some pretty big salmon there next to the fishermen on the right-hand side picture, and that doesn't come from the Puget Sound. It does come from Astoria, Oregon, but it gives you a sense of how large the fish, the salmon can really get. So it says that one's 116 pounds, the other's 121. And so that just goes to show the real kind of growth that was possible when it came to both the trees within the ancient forest as well as the local salmon that were within our streams. These are the kinds of things that would have been then recognized as the historical ecology of the Puget Sound area, for example. So it does talk about those trees being 300 feet in height and 700 years old, and that they did come from the Puyallup watershed, which is particularly important to me because I work for the Puyallup Tribe today, and I do need some, as they call it, reference ecosystems for ecological restoration. So why wouldn't it be the 700-year-old, 300 feet trees in this picture? Another thing in my work, if I'm talking historical ecology and I'm talking a treaty, then we might as well just underscore, at least my sentiments, that treaties were prepayment for future ecosystem services, which means we gave up the land, gave up all of the opportunities associated with the land, except for the little tiny pieces that you allowed to be reserved. And then we've been basically shut out from everything since. So how do you have, how could your hunting, gathering, and fishing opportunities be sufficient when you're basically locked out of most of your ancestral lands? So that's just food for thought. Let's go on. All right, well, see that guy right down there at the bottom of the tree? That just gives you another sense of size. And so this tree, this particular feature was probably one of the top exhibits inside of the new University of Washington School of Forestry building, because that's where this is at. And it just goes to show, the size of the trees that were then used to create that building, let alone that probably wasn't moved in. I bet they just built around it. I can't say for sure. And there's a lady up above that too, but pretty huge stuff. And so let's move on. Because this is today's modern landscape. This is the urban forest that then Muckleshoot and family descendants, such as those from the Cheshiahu family, now have in their midst. But it doesn't mean that there's opportunity there. It looks like a lot of green, looks like a lot of forest, but that does bring up the things like access and barriers that we're here to talk about today. If these are ecocultural resources, that are strewn across the photograph there, of course, intermixed with a lot of modern buildings and infrastructure, then is that a forest? Is that a working forest? Does it need to be a working forest? What just are the real characteristics of that and compared to historical, let alone tribal opportunity, past, present, and future too. So let's keep going. All right, well, now we start getting into the academic side of the conversation. I did try to at least tee things up with some historical reference, some material, images, but this one here is known as a model. It's a conceptual model of a social ecological system. And I like this because it actually then is a more simplistic portrayal of what I was presented as a social ecological systems model when I first began my studies at the University of Washington to earn my master's in marine affairs degree back in 2012. And so I'll show you I'll tell you a little couple features about this one that I think are notable, then I'll show you another one and kind of explain things as we go. So here, we've got 4 main components, A, B, C, and D. Now the next one I'll show you is got the same 4, they're just not in the same spots. But think about this, that you have a resource like an environmental area that is in whatever condition, and we'll call that A. Then across from them, you have what they're saying here, public infrastructure providers, but let's think of that as being people. People supported by the resource, for example. And in between them, we could think of things like public infrastructure, could be decisions that are affecting then, coming from the people that then are affecting the resource conditions, such as approvals for development, things like that. And then you still have the 4th leg. It'll change a little bit from what it is here. They're calling it resource users, but I like to think of it as just being the overall society itself. And so let's see how it changes as we go to the next one. Go to the next one, please. So this is in 2010. This is what I saw as the model that was presented to me as being a social ecological systems model. In fact, it's described as being just that, but otherwise known as the pulse pressure model. So again, you've got social scientists creating these kinds of models, trying to somehow give you a better sense of how people then might relate to things like an ecological system. So you have that on the right-hand side, it says biophysical template. On the left-hand side, it says social template. You see a variety of errors joining them, along with some other, systemic elements too. So at the bottom, it says that ecosystem services join them, that the biophysical template is capable of creating a certain amount of service, certain type of service based on its condition, and then through the concept of ecosystem services, regulating, provisioning, supporting, and cultural, it then has this connection to the social template, which is just society overall. And that's where I'd mentioned before. We need to have all 4 of them there. And then that says external drivers making up that 4th one. Again, I think of it as decision making. So you have the natural world, you have the natural resources, as they're typically called, like in an environmental impact statement, the natural environment, and then you have the social environment, which they'll oftentimes use to then include cultural concerns of tribes when they're doing things like environmental analysis too. Then you have this idea of ecosystem services connecting the two. And again, this is rather new terminology coming out of the United Nations and things like the Earth Summit, if I remember. And so, at that time they said, let's, at least think of these services in terms of these 4 categories: provisioning, regulating, supporting. They're a little bit wonky. You try to get into what does that mean, but you always end up having people not really be in that conversation because they're under cultural ecosystem services, which always gets tucked aside rather than integrated as an equal, is having equal value like it should be. So again, you've got the biophysical template, and it's doing whatever it can do to provide these ecosystem services, but then they get to the social template, and we all know that through meetings, hearings, proposals, projects, all the rest of it, they don't always get their fair shake. And so what about these ecosystem services, and what about these decisions that come out of society that affect the biophysical template? They would seem to be important. Collins on them, they refer to that as pulses and pressures upon the ecological system. That's why they call it the pulse pressure think some things can be episodic, like natural forces, others can be more chronic, like human decision making. Just keep pushing on that system to alter its condition for good or for bad. So that's kind of the idea between social ecological systems, as I learned at the University of Washington. And so I thought that was helpful because it helped me better understand my own work, as well as maybe how I could start taking the idea of cultural resource protection and really tying it to land use decision making overall. So let's go to the next one. I didn't mean to overload you all with slides either. It's just that I needed to tell the story today. So I'm doing the best I can. Just knit it together without getting too detailed. So let's go ahead and move along. Okay. This is something that I made in 95, and that's why it was important to me come almost 20 years later, 2012, 2013, 2014, as I started to really get into my thesis work of 2015 too. Well, I tell you, in that thesis wasn't easy, especially trying to say I care about social ecological systems. And I'll mention that in just another moment. But right now in 95, what I'd done is I'd done something very similar prior to ever seeing that other stuff that came to my attention from Collins et al., which is that I was looking at it. This is my own creation, in which I have the ecological system sitting on the right-hand side, much like Collins et al. Had the biophysical template. And I have the social systems realm on the left-hand side, much like they had the social template. And then I have in between critical resources realm, which I include being natural or cultural resources, which is very much like, as well as natural resources. And so in that, think of natural resources being, again, that's the biophysical template, as it provides these cultural ecosystem services. So you still have on the right-hand side physical template, biophysical. In the middle, you have a thing called ecosystem services. We'll call it an interface here with the social template, and that's off the left-hand side. It includes the cultural dimension as well as community and political and economic as being the main realms of the social system. So again, the only thing really missing then is that decision-making. And so we could say, well, maybe that's cultural resources. So you have the cultural dimension, then you have this idea that they are important resource of important. They have important, considered to be important value by the community, and so again, you kind of have all four in there. I had all four in there. They just didn't end up looking like columns, but that was 20 years earlier. So I felt that was encouraging to keep going with my work. So let's see what I've got next.
Jeff, we have about 5 minutes.
Okay, that sounds good. So here we are then. Again, we're just trying to give you a foundation for the work so that then you can understand where to go. Well, I found myself presenting this in 2002 as a way to say, there's things out there. We need to understand them individually. We need to appreciate them as elements of a system. In fact, I'll call it the eco-cultural restoration system universe model to help get things started. So let's go. Keep going. At my training, then I found that there was another worker on the East Coast who was emphasizing things like job satisfaction. To me, that was equivalent to things like subsistence opportunity for Native people. So he's saying here that when job satisfaction is affected, then so is your mental health, and that it may affect things like personal turnover, absenteeism on the job. But from a health perspective, could be mental health, could be heart disease, could be longevity, could include family violence, could include impaired interpersonal relationships, job performance, all sort of tied back to this idea of job satisfaction, which again, it maybe is an equivalent in Indian country to subsistence opportunity, if you have it or want it, and all the barriers thereof. So let's keep on. Now, I just want to put this one up here. It's not because I'm trying to give you guys a bunch of models that you want to get dragged through, but really because this one does say cultural ecosystem services along with cultural landscapes and assessment of cultural ecosystem services in landscapes. And it also includes spatial and physical planning. So to me, somebody's saying those are important. They call it the conceptual model of the linkages between cultural ecosystem services and cultural landscape research. So, back in 2012, we're now 12 years past this. Where are we doing that here locally, if at all? Let's keep on. So this one here, I mean, you could say, oh my God, Mr. Thomas, please don't show us anymore. But what I have right here now is that we have, there's different kinds of frameworks that are already in place in our existing system. So I've got one from 1987, comes from the State Washington Administrative Code. It's a law, it's a rule, and it's a cultural resource definition. So I just want to make sure people have that. Same thing with over there in 87, you have yet another law, Notice of Forest Practices, that may contain cultural resources to affect Indian tribes. So there is language in there, however inclusive or sufficient, but again, how well are we using these provisions, if at all? Same thing with 88, or 86 in the actual Timber Fish and Wildlife Agreement, yet more commitments to cultural resources. But fast forward to 2022, and you talk about the Sustainable Forestry Initiative and whatever they consider to be measures for performing according to the standards that they want you to adhere to if you're going to get coverage as being a sustainable forest. It also has cultural obligations in there, like identifying trees and flora that's of concern to the tribal community and the uses that they are and values that they're looking for from them as well. So I just want to put those things out there. People should be trying to do some of these things, but I don't hear much conversations relating to them. Let's keep going.
2 minutes.
So, I put this on here because this was sort of our program goals. This is 10 years ago. I'll just point out one. Ecological identity and identification with nature are continuously highlighted. So 10 years ago, I was saying we needed that. So the idea of identity has been important in my subsequent work. Keep going. So there it is, ecocultural spiritual identity. I integrated that idea into what I do at the Northwest Indian College to teach their year-long cultural sovereignty course, which otherwise think of cultural sovereignty as really consisting of at least 4 things. A sense of relationships and traditions and duties and rights, all then really reinforcing what is essentially your identity, your overall identity at the center. So again, ecocultural identity, spiritual identity, that could be really important to this idea of why are Native people at least doing what they do, and why is it that they are so adamant about addressing, meeting their goals. It's not just for themselves and their personal well-being, it's for community well-being and the well-being of, really the non-human relatives too. So we'll keep going. I know we're going to run out of time. That's okay. I'll just mention that here's another way of looking at ecocultural spiritual identity. Here's what I call a medicine star. So it kind of brings up some of the topics that I consider to be related. Keep going. There's the people that we're doing this work for. Think of this as today's youth loving and needing their culture. We actually have to have that. They need it. I know that. Let's keep going. So just to kind of tie off things then, we've been using the idea of exposure to something that we don't really want, being vulnerable to it, having to then draw from whatever resilience we can to then at least sustain ourselves while we're adapting. And that could be environmental change. In fact, it is environmental change. It impacts on society and its stability, culture stability, human well-being, tribal governance, those sort of things. So you just see in there the idea that we want to restore native uses of local forests as being central to what we do. You have a governmental component in there. You have an environmental change. You have a social, and you have a human well-being element to that diagram. Keep going. I think we're down the last 2, 3. So there it is. That's really sort of what we're confronted with when it comes to at least that governmental component of that previous shield, if you might say. But it's, involving this morass of federal, state, county, and city town regulations and provisions at which things like the treaty, at least in our world, the treaty and the agreements that fulfill those obligations, hunting, fishing, gathering, and that kind of thing within our ancestral lands. These are either the barriers that we're needing to overcome, or the targets that we need to use to improve. So last couple here, I think. Let's go next slide, so I can say goodbye. All right. So this is just basically bringing up the idea that we have lots of organizations right out there. There's some that are very important. They're new, they're on the leading edge, like Feed 7 Generations, which is a local native food sovereignty organization. They have on their website a link to the Native Plants and Foods curriculum portal. So how are people supposed to start to relate to traditional cultural plants? Well, it's through these kinds of learnings. Let's go to the last one, I think. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so these organizations like Feed 7 Generations, like the Home Indian Center, like Northwest Indian College Cultural Sovereignty coursework, like this the Private Timber Fish and Wildlife Program, they are using logic models. Those things are based upon current situations and impressions of important needs and existing assets, and what the symptoms are, the problems are, who the stakeholders are we need to engage, what's our mission, vision, values, mandates, all those sort of things. Of course, we're trying to do investments. We're trying to make sure we do activities like workshops, engage the right participants, so that we can get the short, medium, and long-term outcomes that we want. Long-term being things like changing social conditions, including access to environmental lands and areas. So with that, let's just say evaluation is key there. So let's not leave out the idea that we're going to continually re-examine our work using, we'll focus on things, we'll collect data, we'll analyze, we'll interpret, we'll report. But funding is big to that, and having all these other pieces in place so that people want to fund you, that's huge as well. So that seems to be another entire area for training and learning for Native people or those that want to help them meet their needs. So with that, thank you so very much, Rainier Radio and Windz and Change Alliance. Let's move one last one so that people can see our contact information. That wraps it up. And to my brother,
all right.
Thank you so much for the songs, the privilege, the words, and I'll hand it back to you.
All right. So I'm going to sing a final song. And just to tell you who we are, we're children of activists. Our family was involved in civil rights activist stuff in the late 60s, early 70s. We both invaded Fort Lawton in 1970. I was there. He was there. Our oldest brother was at Wounded Knee. He was at the takeover of the BIA building in DC and the takeover of Alcatraz. And our oldest brother brought back this song. And our mother taught us to be involved, that through being involved, we can make change. And Jeff and I have chosen to go to school. I have a master's degree in public administration. He has a master's in marine biology, and make change in our community and help fight for our people. And when we fight for us, we fight for all of you. And so in 1973, my brother brought this song home, and it's a warrior song. And it's an important time in our history because in 1974, we won the Bolt case, which said that we had a treaty right to be co-stewards of the land. And so we have leveraged that. And when we're fighting for the earth for us, we're also fighting for it for you and for everyone. And so, supporting that treaty right, we've been able to leverage that, getting it into court to protect our water systems, to protect our setbacks. So I'm going to sing a song that they call the AIM song, which is a warrior song. And it's for our men and women in the armed services, but it's also for those warriors who fight to protect our Mother Earth, our warriors who fight to protect our way of life, and those warriors who fight to protect all other life on Mother Earth. Way oh, oh, we ha ha ya ya we ha ya hey ha ya hey ha oh. We ha Thank you.
Many thanks. We thank Tony. We thank Rainier Radio World. We thank everyone in the room, all the people behind the scenes, everyone who attended and showed up here. Hands up, hands up. And we appreciate everyone who is live viewing this amazing, amazing program today with our elders, our Muckleshoot elders and elders of the Coast Salish peoples of Seattle, the Chief Cheshiahud peoples that are here. So with thanks, much respect, we honor you, we acknowledge you as we acknowledge our earth in all forms and ways. So many thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Welcome once again to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. And what an amazing presentation by the Winds of Change Alliance, a rare opportunity that we have had here today in celebration of, again, Earth deserves more than a day. Coming up at 2 o'clock, we have another incredible presentation for you that will actually be coming from the Fijian Islands. And there'll be discussion about how climate change is affecting everything in their life. So you want to make sure and tune in for that at 2 o'clock. It's again, Sustaining Our Island, Reflections on Shared Responsibilities, and that will be coming to you from the Fijian Islands. Thank you again for joining us here. Earth deserves more than a day, and that's how we are getting down all week long. Tomorrow, we've got more great stuff coming up for you. And then after the 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock webinar that's coming from the Fijian Islands, we'll be here with the Executive Climate Equity Team. That's King County's Executive Climate Equity Team. They'll be talking about green jobs. Heard a little bit about that yesterday in our panel discussion. They'll also be addressing the Climate Equity Task Force and the climate preparedness effort at King County. So we're still going. We've got more to go. And thank you again for joining us. We'll be back in about 20 minutes. Thank you.